I'm at my mother-in-law's today, and I hope she won't mind me saying that this is probably one of the most badly built structures I've ever seen. These roof sheets are meant to be installed with a minimum 5-degree pitch, but this one is basically flat, and in the middle of the structure over there you can see where water is actually pooling. At the end, all of the timber is badly rotten where moisture has got to it. For a total span of 3 meters, which is what we have here, 6x2s should have been used, 150 by 50 mil timber in other words, but instead what we have is 60 by 45 mil timber, so basically smaller than 3x2s, but it's worse than that. The rafters they used weren't even long enough, and there's no fancy scarf joinery here. Instead, they've just screwed some bits to the ends, which gives the impression that this was basically built from scrap material that was laying around, which is even worse when you consider the fact that between centres we have gaps as big as 750 millimeters. There are no posts supporting the weight of this roof structure either. These are just more 3x2s, screwed down to a paving slab using angle brackets. There's a cutaway at the corner to leave space for this flute extension pipe which serves the boiler, which isn't a bad thing because there are some regulations that need to be adhered to, but still, I hope that we can improve on this. And generally, everything just looks like a bit of a bodge. So join me as I attempt to turn this dodgy bodge job into something which is hopefully much nicer. Demolishing this shouldn't take long, and I began with good intentions of removing all of the screws on the roof sheets, thinking that they may be able to be cleaned up and reused for something. But I realised these were way too brittle after 20 years of UV damage, so I moved on to more destructive measures. I started making some relief cuts in the timber, as I'll need to get all of this in the back of my car. And a lot of this wood will be repurposed once I get it home after cutting away all of the rotten bits. Finally was this stubborn wall plate, as many of the screws were so rusty that they just snapped. It felt a bit sketchy doing this up a ladder, especially with all the debris on the floor, so I decided to clear it all away first. This plastic flashing was held on with about 3 tons of silicone. I want to thank Materials Market for supplying most of the building materials for this project. I'm not being paid for this, but they have provided a link where you can get a 5% discount using the code RAG'n'BoneBrown on building materials delivered straight to your door, and you'll find that link in the description box below. So obviously I've got some obstacles to work around here. I've got a copper pipe and an electrical cable. So I think I'm going to place my wall plate above those. And this structure will be taller than 2.5 meters, but because I'm not within 2 meters of a boundary, that means I can still do it under permitted development here in the UK. I'm going to be reusing one of the salvaged 3x2s from the old structure as a wall plate for the new structure. And I'll use a couple of spare pieces of timber to get it positioned where I want it. I know that these bricks are level, so I can just line it up with the mortar line. And these are 10mm holes I'm drilling with the SDS drill, straight into the brick. These Torx head concrete screws are great for securing timber to masonry, but they're not actually rated for structural applications. So I've bought some of these by DeWalt. They've got a hex head, and as you can see, they are a lot more chunky. I was very pleased with these. They went in easy and gave a really secure fixing. A box of 25 of these was £25. Now I just need to complete the wall plate to the other side of this pipe. So I've got a couple of these 100mm posts, and to seat them on, I've got some of these post holders which I can just screw down to the paving slabs. Just want to check they fit, and yes they do. Now what I like about these is that it gives about a 1-inch void between the bottom of the post and the ground, which will help protect it from moisture. What I don't like about these though is that there's only one fixing point in the middle. I would have preferred to have 2 holes so that I could get 2 screws in, but once the structure is all built, the post shouldn't be able to twist anyway. I can use clamps and a few scraps of timber to get the posts sitting plumb. And then I can clamp on another piece of timber, level it with the spirit level, and make some marks to indicate where to cut my joinery. I also mark up the posts for left and right, and then mark the position of the post holders. I want to make some cuts just shy of halfway through the timber to form a lap joint. Now, carefully does it, I was worried about breaking the slabs, so I drilled some 6mm holes as delicately as possible. With the first one I couldn't get a good fixing with the concrete screw. I added a brown raw plug, and that cinched it down really nice. The second one though, went in just fine. And a few 70 by 5mm screws to secure the post. Next I need to work out the approximate length of my main beam, and I can do that by referencing this dimension from here to the wall with a measurement taken from my laser measure, but I'll cut it longer anyway so that I can trim it back to ensure that it's positioned right where I need it. And for the beam and the rafters, I'll be using this C24 grade 6x2 timber. Now some of these timbers are straighter than others, and I want to make sure that I mark up any that have a slight arc to them so that when I place the rafters, the arc is upwards. We don't want any saggy rafters. But first I need to cut that main beam. And I've got some spirit-based exterior wood stain to help protect the timber. I'm a big fan of water-based finishes inside the house, but over the years I've noticed that they just don't hold up well outside. And the beam gets secured to each post with 3 coach screws. The pitch of this roof should work out to being around 5 degrees based on the measurements I've used for the posts and the wall plate, but I don't need to know exactly what it is, as I can mark up for the joinery just by offering up the joist and referencing from the wall plate and beam. And I can set a bevel gauge to the angle, which will help when marking out my notches. These can be cut with just a handsaw, but I'll show a quicker method shortly. For the front of the rafter, I'll leave a bit of a horn which will overhang the front beam slightly. And this is the quicker method using the circular saw and then the handsaw to finish up. I brought with me my trusty sidekick and go-to meal in a pot, a Huel hot and savoury pot. These are great for taking out to a job, they take less than 5 minutes to prepare, and starting at only £3.05 per pot, it's cheaper than forgetting your lunch and panic buying a miserable petrol station sandwich. I've been trying to eat less meat for a while, and these pots are 100% vegan, but with up to 22 grams of protein they keep me full for several hours, enough to survive the mid-afternoon biscuit temptation. This is the katsu curry noodles, which comes second only to their hoisin duck noodles in my opinion, and if you like spicy food, then you'll love the fiery chicken noodles, which doesn't just dance on your tongue, it starts a mosh pit. There's also the pasta bolognese, spaghetti carbonara, and Korean barbecue flavours. Each pot contains all the nutrients, proteins, essential fats, carbs, fibre, vitamins and minerals that the human body needs as part of a balanced diet, and no artificial colours or flavours. For a discount, please check out the link and promo code in the description if you're interested in trying them, and thanks to Huel for sponsoring this video. I can now check that those notches on the first rafter look good, and they do. So I can now use that as a template to mark up the other rafters. Each one then gets 2 coats of the stain. This is the second coat going on. I need to check the rafter is square to the wall plate. A framing square would be best for this, but I didn't have one with me, so a large speed square does the job. And now I can see how much I need to trim from my beam. Next, I'm going to create a story stick to represent the width of my polycarbonate roof sheets. The first mark represents the width of the sheet, the second is plus 6mm, allowing 3mm per side for expansion and contraction. And I can use this stick to determine the position of the rafters, which will hold these glazing bars on them. Then I can centre the rafters that will sit in between those that have the glazing bars on them. The spacings here are around 570mm. The exception is this one here, which ideally would have been placed pretty much right where the flue extension pipe is, so I decided to position that slightly off centre. I don't think it'll be too noticeable from beneath once the structure is complete. Now back to squaring up each rafter to the wall plate, but before I drive this screw in fully, I noticed that I needed to shift the whole structure tighter to the wall plate. So for that, I cut a wedge and a block, which I can sandwich in between the beam and the garage roof to push it back where it needs to be. This is where that slightly off-centered rafter ended up. Not ideal, but it'll be okay. Here I'm clamping on a batten just to allow me to mark up a straight line right in the centre on the underside of the rafters. This will enable me to line up all of my noggins nice and straight.
Now at the moment there's quite a bit of wobble from left to right, as you can see, and ordinarily I would usually add some diagonal braces to the inside of the structure here, but obviously that's going to get in the way of the door opening, so what I think I'm going to do is add some braces on the outside instead, and this will be a nice job for some of these offcuts. It's been about 3 weeks since I was here last, and that's because I wanted to give this wood a good chance to dry out because it's pressure treated, so it was very wet, and hopefully it should be dry enough now to get some finish on.
So time to get the roof on, and this is 16mm triple wall polycarbonate. They are labelled to show which side should face the outside, and the first job is to get the ends sealed up for the end that will be buttered up against the wall, and for that I'm using 75mm foil tape. I picked a day without much wind for this because doing this on my own on a windy day would be very problematic. Don't ask me how I know. I position the first sheet 3mm in from the end rafter, and then I can mark up where I want to cut around the pipe. I'll leave around 12mm clearance. I used a vacuum to try and clear out the dust, and rather than using the foil tape to seal up the ends here, I thought that using clear sealant would look better. According to regulations, the flue outlet needs to be a minimum of 300mm above the roof. And as you can see, I've got a lot more than that here. These are the aluminium closures which work on both the edges and the ends of the sheets. And I wanted to use poly pins to secure these, but I didn't have any with me, so I'll fix this later. And in the meantime, I can fit this breathable tape to the ends, which will stop any dirt or bugs getting in, but also allow any moisture to escape. Then I can fix the glazing bars with some 50mm screws. Now the last sheet is going to need to be cut to fit the space that remains. For the rafters in between those with the glazing bars, I have some of these fixings, and the shaft on these measured 11mm, so I had to go and get a 12mm drill bit, which still wasn't quite big enough because obviously an expansion gap is needed, and I drilled the holes and then kind of wiggled the drill around just to expand the hole. Anyway, these come with a foam washer for the inside, plus a screw and a screw cap. And I fitted these 400mm apart. These are the poly pins going in. The glazing bars come with plastic end caps. To seal up the gap between the polycarbonate and the house, I've got some of this flash band, which seems to have a bad reputation among some people, but I've never had any bad experiences with it. It's always worked brilliantly for me and lasted for many, many years, so let's get it on. Now the sun is going to help heat this up and really stick it on, but just to help it along, I've brought my heat gun. I also applied this to the side wall. This is a big improvement, and one which my mother-in-law is very happy with. The build took 4 days to complete, but if I wasn't filming, I reckon I'd have got it done in 3. Thank you for watching.